Today, Bitcoin posts a 16% weekly gain as crypto's momentum holds strong. The hacker who drained thousands of Bitcoin from Bitfinex is sentenced to 5 years in prison. And Will Peck of WisdomTree lays out what a US Bitcoin stockpile would mean for the industry. Welcome to CNBC's Crypto World. I'm Brandon Gomez. Crypto markets mostly in the red this morning as we close out the week. As of noon Eastern, Bitcoin was holding steady at the $89,000 level, but Ether dropped 4 1/3% to $3,000, and Solana fell 3.5% to $209. Today's losses aren't enough to dam the post-election rally, though, for Ether and Solana. In the past week, both are up 3 and 5% respectively. Bitcoin, meanwhile, jumping more than 16% since last Friday, while the S&P was on track to lose about 2% this week as of noon Eastern. Okay, let's talk about the top stories for today. The man behind the 2016 Bitfinex hack will head to prison for 5 years. Ilya Lichtenstein, who stole $70 million worth of Bitcoin at the time, faced sentencing yesterday after he and his wife pleaded guilty to money laundering conspiracy in August of last year. In a sentencing memorandum, prosecutors called the hack one of the largest thefts from a virtual currency exchange, and Lichtenstein one of the greatest money launderers that the government has encountered in the crypto space. Next, attorney generals from 18 states, along with the DeFi Education Fund, a nonprofit crypto advocacy group, just sued the SEC. The lawsuit alleges the agency engaged in regulatory overreach and interfered in state sovereignty. The suit argues the agency's crypto policy is unlawful and asks the court to prevent it from bringing future enforcement actions against digital asset platforms. We reached out to the SEC about this lawsuit, and a spokesperson said, while we don't comment on the litigation, state securities regulators have been strong partners in efforts to uncover and prosecute misconduct in crypto markets. And states have worked alongside the SEC to bring enforcement action in the past. BlockFi paid hefty fines to the SEC in 32 states for violating securities laws. Last, Trump has tapped former SEC Chair Jay Clayton to take over as U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of New York. President-elect Donald Trump announced the nomination yesterday on Truth Social, saying Clayton did an incredible job as SEC Chair. It was under Clayton's leadership that the agency brought its enforcement action against Ripple, accusing it of conducting a securities offering of more than $1 billion. Ripple largely came out on top on that case when a federal judge said the firm didn't issue securities to retail investors, but that XRP could be considered a security in institutional sales. More recently, Clayton has been outspoken in his support for crypto. Reuters reports that Clayton expects regulations to move through Congress under Trump's next term, and said himself that he favored easing regulations on the industry. The Southern District of New York has hosted prosecutions for many high-profile financial crimes, including the trial of Sam Bankman-Fried last year. All right, for our main story, as the next Trump administration comes into focus, many in the crypto industry are hoping the president-elect will make good on his promises to the industry, including a strategic Bitcoin stockpile. Crypto World's Mackenzie Sigalo spoke to Will Peck, head of digital assets at WisdomTree, about what a U.S. Bitcoin stockpile would mean for price and the industry.
So the idea of a strategic Bitcoin stockpile was a major promise among Republicans at Bitcoin 2024, including Donald Trump. So let's start with how realistic this idea could be, that the U.S. could take the Bitcoin that it seized in enforcement actions and actually apply it to a stockpile. What's the timeline that you're thinking for something like that?
I don't know exactly what the timeline would be like. I think when it's certainly framed that way, that obviously the government has, through various legal activities over the years, collected a fair amount of Bitcoin. Historically, I believe it's sold it. And if it hangs on to it and then wants to grow it from there, I mean, that certainly seems like something that would be achievable. Now, if that meets the idea of what a strategic reserve could be, I mean, I think is maybe up to what others could determine. It's not the idea that, like, the U.S. government has historically held lots of gold bullion, for example, dating back to kind of the history of gold as currency. So that sounds slightly different for me, but certainly seems something that could be achievable in the near term.
Okay, so let's talk about price specifically and how much of an impact something like this would have on Bitcoin's run higher. Is the effect more on the front side as people anticipate this and other countries try to perhaps preempt the U.S., or is it more of a steady climb higher if something like a strategic reserve or a national stockpile of Bitcoin ultimately gets implemented under Trump?
It's tough to say exactly how price performs. Some people are making some extremely bold predictions about how the market will react to something like this. Bitcoin's got a fairly simple supply-demand dynamic, though, right? You know what the supply is going to be, and it's really a matter of demand. So if governments, whether the US or others around the world, are saying they're going to be buying, X million billion dollars of Bitcoin on a regular basis, I think you'd have a decent idea how that can affect the price. Now, obviously, very tough to say. People are trying to get ahead of it. Who knows if some of this move has already been baked in. There's been a huge move since the election, which in some ways caught me off guard, given how quickly it moved, even though markets were predicting Trump was probably going to win. But I guess we'll need to see as we kind of get more details around what this could be.
So what does this mean for the industry as a whole? What would it signal to Bitcoiners versus crypto enthusiasts more broadly? Does a Bitcoin stockpile matter as much to those in Ethereum or other networks?
Probably not. Although I think generally you'd think that assets would be correlated with Bitcoin, although this could be something that causes kind of more of a divergence in asset price performance if there is true just buying of Bitcoin and less of other tokens beyond that. I think more importantly, though, is just the overall environment for crypto blockchain development in the US now. The strategic reserve, and you can make an argument that this is just people kind of pitching as part of an election. Lots of promises are made. But I think what's been really clear, and I've had some colleagues that were just in DC recently, is that there's a much more welcoming attitude towards crypto broadly in U.S. Congress at this point, and presumably amongst the regulatory administrative agencies going forward. And obviously this touches both the security side, commodity side, also the banking side. So it'll be really interesting to see how that develops. And I think more importantly than what a reserve is, what kind of that could be, is the overall development of crypto blockchain tokenization, stablecoins in the U.S., and this being a very conducive environment for that potentially going forward.
Yeah, I've been speaking to folks from the crypto industry who have been having a lot of conversations with a mix of House representatives and senators newly elected about what the legislative agenda might be. Now, the overwhelming consensus is that we likely won't see something during a lame duck. But first on the docket is getting that stablecoin bill through. It seems like there are more complications with Fit 21, and everyone has essentially baked in that SAB 121 is going away as soon as we see a changing of the guard at the top of that commission. Is that also the sense that you're getting? And are you talking to lawmakers on Capitol Hill about this?
Yeah, that's the sense that WisdomTree is getting, and the people that we speak with, the trade groups that we're a part of. Obviously, I think there's some stats being thrown out there that 100% of the crypto supportive congressmen were congresspeople were elected in this election. Clearly, this is becoming a bipartisan issue that is, and frankly, Trump has embraced it, and the Trump administration seems to be embracing it. We'll see which of his nominees get confirmed and how much they're going to continue to embrace it going forward. But it feels like a real kind of tone shift from DC in terms of embracing this technology, trying to have the U.S. be a central hub of financial innovation. And as this becomes a bipartisan issue, it's going to be great to kind of see the developments of that. I think it's just a positive overall for people trying to build stuff in the space like WisdomTree and like other companies, entrepreneurs in the space, and hopefully for U.S. consumers, most importantly.
Is WisdomTree in conversation with the Trump transition team?
No, nothing that I could kind of discuss or reveal. We're not.
And are you, at least through a conduit or perhaps to a member of the inner circle, are you at all being asked to give recommendations on an SEC chair or other positions that the incoming president might be looking to fill?
No. Our involvement is really primarily through trade groups or different trade associations that we do. But, for example, our chief legal officer just visiting DC, speaking with Congress people and others who are interested in the space around, stablecoins and other stuff. So don't have any insight or involvement or recommendations there. But we are kind of advocating, and through our, various representatives, what we think is kind of the right path forward for kind of various issues in front of Congress and the agencies on this. And, I think it's been a good dialogue so far.
Let's also get your reaction to the recent rally that we've seen and whether you think that this is sustainable or really just excitement and anticipation working through the crypto market.
Crypto's volatile. Even as more and more people come in, it's still incredibly volatile. So, like I said, it was a violent move upward, even given that the Trump administration or Trump was likely to win the election. And so that, I think can reasonably take people off guard. So I don't know how sustainable it's going to be going forward, how much of this is just excitement, people trying to get ahead of it. We'll certainly see in the coming months. But long term, like I said, I think remain bullish on the space. That should be reflected in asset prices, but a lot of other stuff goes into that, including macroeconomic conditions, right? So, if there's a pro-growth, expect inflation to potentially remain high. continued money supply growth, higher deficits, that would seem to be an environment that's conducive for a kind of a hard money asset like Bitcoin. But obviously, we've only got such limited history with that. We'll need to see it be borne out.
Last question for you about the ETF market that is growing around the crypto ecosystem. Rather than going down the list of altcoins and launching new spot funds around them, the sense that I get is that it's really much more about creating leverage in a new margin framework. Talk to me about the future of ETFs and what products are going to be built to kind of mature this ecosystem.
Well, I mean, ETFs, transparency, liquidity, tax efficiency, they provide investors, whether it's the largest, institutional investor or smallest retail investor, kind of access to the same exposure in the same way. And I think you're seeing that really be borne out with, Bitcoin, where it's simplified in a lot of ways for. It's actually interesting with Bitcoin ETFs. It's really the first time where mom and pop retail had a easier experience accessing an asset class than, financial advisors or other institutional assets. The ETFs kind of leveled that playing field, and I think you're going to see more adoption from financial advisors and wealth managers over time in that. And then, people can short ETFs. There's going to be options traded on ETFs. There's lots of advantages, and just kind of showing crypto moving into the mainstream around it. So I think, like we've seen with, frankly, all liquid asset classes, you're going to start to see with Bitcoin, and the ETF is really an enabler of that and just working it through the pipes of the existing financial system in a better way.
Okay, that's all we have for Crypto World this week. We're back again on Monday. We'll see you then.